Hi everybody, Ryan Barath here. Welcome once again to my build shop. And today I'm going to dive into the process of building a driver. I have a driver head here and I'm going to be reshafting it. The hosel is already clean, so I don't need to worry about that. If you are cleaning out a hosel, if you're not starting with an adapter that is already clean, what you're going to want to do is use a drill with a wire brush to make sure that you clean everything out. And then the next step is making sure that you prep the graphite shaft properly. Okay, so let's dive into the assembly. I've got my epoxy ready, I've got my driver head, it's all cleaned out. And as I mentioned, we got to prep this graphite shaft. So what I like to do is, I'll get my little garbage can over here, get my straight blade out and just start scraping. Is this time consuming? Yes. This way that I know I'm not going to go past the paint and the finish, and I will not get into the graphite layers. So I'll just go through there and then give it one little extra scratch. Take a look at it. I can see graphite, but I'm not scraping into it. I'm not getting into any of the layers. I'm just strictly taking off that top layer. And now, pull that tape off. I'm not going to check the depth yet. The reason I'm not going to check the depth yet is because there's dust and debris from that process on the end of the golf shaft. I mean, heck, it's still on my fingers. See that? Wouldn't think there'd be that much stuff that come off an end of a clean graphite shaft, but that's what came off of this thing. And if you got that into the club head or on the shaft during the assembly process, you could weaken the bond, and that is not a good thing. So you want to make sure that you are cleaning after that process. I'm going to check it for depth. Oh, look at that. Nothing, no scratch marks, no nothing to worry about. And you'll see it's only like 1/8 of an inch, maybe even less. But now, once I glue it, once it's sitting there, I have nothing to worry about. That's clean. Let's mix some epoxy. I've got a 2-part epoxy here in a syringe. If you are a beginner or you are someone that is doing clubs once in a while, using a syringe versus trying to use 2 different parts and weighing them out and trying to check them for mass, this just makes that process a lot easier. Only need roughly a pea size. I'm going to clean this off. Now I'm going to start mixing. And the key to mixing is to not whip it up like whipped cream or scrambled eggs or whatever you're trying to do. You just want to stir it in nice. Stir it in. You want to prevent air bubbles. Epoxy has been mixed. I'm going to let it sit for like just a minute to make sure it's all kind of doing its chemistry magic here. Take a few moments to clean a few things up. So the epoxy's here. I know this is all clean. I've got my blue shop towel ready to go. And from here, just that tiny, tiny little bit. This is like half of a pea. Normally I'd say a pea size, but you might hear a little sound come out the end of the shaft. That means that there's a little tiny bit of epoxy that's gone up the shaft. That's not a big deal. What you don't want to hear is like you push it in there, it goes boom, because that means there's probably a ton of epoxy in there, and that's not a good thing. You want to use just enough to coat the inside of the shaft. Some is inevitably going to work its way up the shaft a tiny, tiny bit, but we're talking about this much. You do not want to see a plug of epoxy up the shaft like this, and you prevent that by not using too much in the first place. I like to give it a little spin. Check it out. All right there. It is coated. It's generously coated. There's really no epoxy up the shaft yet because I have not used enough, and again, I don't really want to have a lot go up there. But just for my own sake, what I like to do is I like to go one more time, use the same amount inside the shaft, give it the little twist. Well, I heard it that time. That means that we know there's a little bit of extra in there, and that's okay. See, I already know that there's no way that there's enough epoxy to work its way up the shaft. Once I get to about just where I can see, now it's hard to tell now because the epoxy is glossy, the shaft finish is glossy, but I know that right there is where the edge of the scraping that I did to prep that graphite shaft. I don't want extra epoxy on underneath, or coming up, sorry, as it's going through the curing process. So I will wipe this off now before I put it into the bottom of the rest of the driver. So at the end, once it's dry, I know that I'm not going to get any of those marks, any of the excess epoxy at the top of the golf shaft once it's gone through that process. So I'm going to line up the shaft graphics here. I'm gonna press down and use my body weight. It's not a super lightweight graphite shaft, but I would not go through the process of like trying to slam it down and hit it into the bottom of the hosel. There's really no need for that. I already know that the shaft is in the bottom. I'm just gonna use my body weight to press it in, line up the graphics, set it up against the wall. And we're all set. Now, one thing that I do like to do, just because I get a little picky when it comes to the driver shafts, is I will take something like a dozen golf balls. Obviously, I have a small selection here, and I will use the box to create a square leading edge. Because the driver sole, unlike an iron sole, is a lot more rounded, I will line it up so I know that the face is square. I can look at the graphics. The graphics are all square, and I know the hosel adapter is already where it should be. Now we just wait for the epoxy to cure, and once it's done, we'll head over to the gripping station and get that 360 grip on there so we can take it to the golf course and play some golf with it. The epoxy is now dry, and we are back at the gripping station. When it comes to the driver, there are steps that we don't have to do when we're doing an iron, and that is worry about the ferrule. So because of that, we can go right to the gripping station and focus on showing you how to put a grip on properly. Oh, now see that? We've touched on this before. This clamp pressure, if I was to even get close to clamping this shaft in here, I would completely crush it. Now this is a slightly heavier shaft. I would still crush this shaft trying to get it clamped. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to adjust the clamp pressure because the outside diameter of this shaft is a little wider. Line the club head up. There we go. Now we're set. Leading edge is square. I have not crushed this brand new driver shaft, which is very helpful. And one last thing, which I forgot to mention, because you're probably wondering, why did I bring this? It looks like a melted lollipop. This is the epoxy. So I always save the epoxy on the card that I mixed it on. So when I go to finish the assembly of the golf club, I just do a quick little check. And there we go. That tells me that the epoxy has properly cured, so I don't have to worry about if later down the line, once the script is dry, I want to go right to the golf course and hit it. I'm perfectly safe to do so. I will be using a 360 grip on this golf club. The reason I want to do this is because I love to mess with the hosel settings on my driver. If it's a really dry day, I want to get that golf ball nice and high, I'm going to get the loft higher. If it's windy, I want to launch some low missiles, try to launch low missiles. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lower that loft, and no matter what I do, if I have a 360 grip, it's going to feel the same in every single hosel orientation or adapter orientation of your driver or fairway wood or hybrid or any of the adjustable clubs in your bag. And that's important because, as I said before, the grip is the only connection that you have between you and your golf club. So you want it to feel the same on every single swing. Whether you use the same grip on all your clubs or not, a 360 grip on your adjustable clubs and an align grip or some type of logo grip on your other clubs, that's totally fine. But you want that consistency throughout your bag. And for me, I get that consistency from a 360 grip. I'm going to come over, I'm going to line it up, take the appropriate amount of tape. Let's go here, get that little extra, put it onto the shaft. Once again, check. What I like to do, some people will go past the end of the grip and then cut it with like a razor blade or something. I don't really like doing that because I don't want to put any mark into the graphite shaft, whether it be graphite or steel. So I will use the little marking on the end of the grip. That is my place to end where the tape is going to be. And then I will finish wrapping that tape on the shaft. Peel that off. Look at that. Sometimes you get a little extra. Just got about ½ an inch there. Push that on, push it in. If you have anything more than that amount, I would say in most cases use some scissors and cut it. That way you don't potentially adjust the length of the driver. I've seen people use so much tape that they add ¼ inch to a driver. That's not any good. And now from here, what I'm going to do is just go through the process of installing the grip and lining up the Golf Pride 360. Being a particular person, I like to make sure that the grip is on straight. I also want to keep my hands nice and clean, so this is the technique that I use when I'm putting grips on. Get it nice and saturated. Gives me the opportunity to, after the fact, if I am using a grip that is not 360, especially if it's a putter grip or something, I can go on and take that extra time to make sure that the grip is on straight. That tape is nice and saturated. Clean the end of that off. Grab my towel here because I don't want any spray out the end of the grip if there's any extra solvent in that grip. Take a moment to look where it says Golf Pride 360 on the end of the grip. Look at the logo, look at the end. Push that on. Use the towel, make sure it's all the way on, clean off the end, clean off the bottom. From the end here, now the nice thing is all the graphics on this grip are parallel, so it's pretty easy to figure out if it's on straight or not. And then from there, just do a little extra. So it's all the way down, push it on. One final check with some paper towel. And then last but not least, if I am even remotely concerned that I did not that grip on all the way, what I like to do, take it out of the gripping station and just give it one of these. Just a nice little tap. So just a little bit of body weight, a little bit of tapping. And then last but not least, one trick you want to make sure, because I've seen people grab grips all the time and after the fact they realize that the grip is not on all the way. Just give it a quick little check. Just press the grip. If you're feeling that it's really wiggling around the end of the shaft, well then you might have to go back, clamp it in here quick, push it all the way on, give it that tap one more time. But as you can see here, grip is on nice and snug. I know that it's on straight. I'm going to give it the eye test. And once the solvent's dry, I'm ready to go to the golf course. So hopefully you found this useful. Again, whether you are putting on a 360 grip that doesn't have a logo, but you're just curious for consistency's sake to make sure that you do it properly, or you're putting on a grip like the Golf Pride Align that has that alignment aid, using some sort of alignment on the grip will give you the confidence to know that you're putting it on straight every time. So whether it be an individual grip on your putter or your driver, or having all the grips through your irons and wedges matching, or through your entire set, when you have the confidence in knowing that your grips are on straight, you're going to feel that you can grip that golf club, you know where the leading edge is aiming, you know where you're aiming, and you can feel confident in your golf swing. Hopefully you learned something about how to put grips on your golf clubs and how to do it more confidently. I'm Ryan Barath. As always, thanks for watching.